This is DesignSafe Radio, where natural hazards researchers strive to make our society more resilient to everything nature throws at us.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of DesignSafe Radio. Super excited to have you here today. We've got 3 REU students who are working at the SimCenter this summer. We have William Zakka, Adithya Nair, and Claire Sorensen. Welcome, guys. Good to have you.
Happy to be here.
Yep, happy to be here.
So, undergraduates, so long ago. How did you guys get into working with the SimCenter? What's some of your background and what interested you about it? We'll go William, Adithya, and finish up with Claire.
Okay, so first of all, I'm a rising senior at the University of Texas at Austin. I study civil engineering. Yeah, welcome. Over the past few years, I've gotten more interested in geotechnical engineering. I've also worked with some of the geotechnical faculty at my university, and a lot of them talked to me about this program, and I sort of read about it on my own, and so thought it was really interesing. So decided to.
You got sucked into the Dr. Stokey Kool-Aid then, huh?
Yeah. So I thought it was cool. I applied and ended up here for the summer.
That's great. Yeah, UT Austin has just some really quality faculty down there. Got to meet a few of them. Dr. Stokey, you mentioned, of course, and Farnu Mung at the Shake Table, and everybody at DesignSafe. Really, really good group of people down there.
I've worked with Dr. Mokhtar too. I don't know if you know him.
Oh yeah. I met him a couple times. He's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Adithya, how about you?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, first of all, Dan. So I am a rising senior at The Ohio State University in Columbus.
All right. So I won't hold it against you, though. I went to Illinois and I work at Purdue.
It's okay. I like your guys' tennis team, so that works out.
There you go.
But yeah, I started getting interested in geotechnical engineering, like Will said as well, through one of my mentors at OSU, Dr. Purdell. He's actually the only faculty in geotech at Ohio State, and I really loved his class, and so I decided to get involved in undergraduate research with him, and he kind of pressed me to apply to research during the summer outside of Ohio State and within. So I decided to apply to a couple RU programs, and I'm happy and I'm lucky that I got this one.
That's great. Glad to have you in the NHERI family, and good to see some Big Ten representation.
Yeah, thank you.
How about you, Claire?
I'm also going into my senior year, but I go to the University of North Carolina, Wilmington.
Awesome.
I'm actually a coastal engineering major, but I started out as a physics major and I had no idea what I was going to do with that. So UNCW introduced this new program of coastal engineering, so I got into that. And then one of my professors recommended the REU program to me as a rising engineer, and I applied, and it's been a blast. So,
how did you decide to go from physics to coastal engineering? Aside from the fact that coastal engineers get to go to some of the coolest places in the world.
I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my physics degree. I always really enjoyed science and the creative side that comes with engineering, but UNCW didn't offer an engineering degree. I would have to go to NC State for a dual program. So then my freshman year, they first introduced the coastal engineering program, so I kind of just looked into it a little bit more and decided that's what I wanted to do with my science background, and so I just kind of dove into it.
No pun intended. I love a good coastal engineering pun. Awesome. It's so cool to see a variety of backgrounds and experience and paths of career. So you're working with the SimCenter through the network is headquartered over at UC Berkeley, but people working in the SimCenter all over the place. Excuse me. So what have you been able to experience this summer? What has that experience been like so far?
I guess we can follow the same order. I'll
yeah,
go.
Sure. We can go in any order from here.
Yeah. So I've been working with Dr. Adam Zarnokse, who's a postdoc at Stanford, so not Berkeley either. Yeah. And so really working at the SimCenter, you get to meet a lot of people from all over the place, right? So We've also been working with Dr. Arduino from the University of Washington.
Oh, he's great.
And Dr. Maurer from the University of Washington as well. So it really it gives you the chance to have a lot of resources from all over the place and collaborate on the project together.
What kinds of projects have you been able to work on so far?
So what we're working on is developing like a high resolution soil model for the city of Alameda in California, to have to gather a list of input parameters that can be used in a site response analysis. And so we're getting things like shear wave velocity and liquefaction information, liquefiable soil layers and their depths and relative density and things like that, that we'll be able to use to run a site response analysis. So that's the project in a nutshell.
So for the non-geotechnical engineers in the audience, of me being one of them, what is a site response analysis, and why are those parameters that you're getting important to it?
So basically what we're looking at is when, in the case of an earthquake, when you have some ground motions, you're seeing how those ground motions will propagate to the surface and what's the actual liquefaction and ground shaking risks associated with that. And so basically assessing the damage that could propagate from the earthquake.
And so those are data that already exist, and you're pulling that together, or?
So yeah, we're using a lot of different resources, some USGS maps and some other data. We have CPT data and borehole data, and so it's really a lot of combining that sort of information and using some predictive models to get a bit more information on the rest of it.
Oh, okay, cool. And the other two, you're working on the same project, or they got you working on some different things?
So I'm working on something very similar involving soil liquefaction or earthquake-induced liquefaction as well. But I'm using the SimCenter's QuoFem application, which is a uncertainty quantification tool that uses finite element method. So looking at, a block of soil or a certain profile of soil through the use of certain elements. So you can think of it as like pixels on a screen, and those elements consist of nodes, and you look at the stress and strain of those nodes when an earthquake affects that soil profile. So I'm using the QuoFem application to calibrate a model developed at the UC Davis Centrifuge Center. And that model it's very well known. It's a material model called PM4SAN, created by Dr. Boulanger and Ziatopolo over there. And kind of similar to what Will said, we are trying to find out the parameters that best match a data set that they had tested at that centrifuge of a sample of something called Ottawa F65 sand. And that's basically what we're doing. So it's kind of a 3-step process. First, it's called sensitivity analysis, where I look at the influence of certain parameters that go into that model on the outcome of that model. So see which parameters are trivial or don't affect them, like the output of the model as much. From there, I perform something called Bayesian calibration, which is trying to find the range, like a probabilistic range of the value of those parameters that could match that experimental data that we have from the Centrifuge Center. And then lastly, with the help of Dr. Arduino as well from the University of Washington, he provided my team, so that's 2 postdocs, Dr. Akash Satish and Dr. Songri, both from UC Berkeley at the SimCenter. And what we're doing is using a sand column model that he provided that is slightly sloped and has different profiles. It has 3 layers. And we're going to input a simulated motion of the Loma Prieta earthquake that happened a couple years ago, and seeing how the parameters that we got from the calibration affect how that model behaves. And we are trying to see how, if the soil undergoes lateral displacement or lateral spreading. So it's a pretty dense project, but I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it speaks to one of the advantages of the SimCenter being part of a wider network of facilities within NHERI. You've got both expertise as well as world-class facilities from UC Davis, from the University of Washington, from UC Berkeley, all working together. So Claire, what have they got you working on this summer?
So my project is pretty different than the other two because I'm not in the geotechnical field. So what I'm working on is kind of building a hybrid model to predict storm surges. So what we're doing is we're taking like data from like the National Hurricane Center, and we're taking storm surge data, and we're making geoclaw simulations, so the 2D shallow water solver geoclaw. And from geoclaw, we're getting these outputs of storm parameters, and we're trying to create a neural network using TensorFlow that's going to take all these storm parameters and be able to match them up with storm classification. So basically it's combining like the physics-based model of geoclaw with like the neural network based model, and it's gonna kind of cut back on like the computational cost that comes with running storm surge simulations, and we're trying to see if we can get better by doing this. So it's just a long process of trying to train a model to recognize data and all that.
Wow. So when you say neural network, you're meaning like you're going to feed it an input from this 2D computational framework, and you're going to say, this is what we mean when we give you this, and train it to recognize those on its own.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. So what will that allow you to do when this is finished? Like go from, a few hours on a supercomputer to a few, minutes or something?
Yeah, so I am not necessarily sure how much it's going to cut back on, but right now, like certain storm surge simulations, you're not able to predict it in fast enough time where you can evacuate people quickly enough.
Mm-hmm.
So my outcome, because I'm only working on this project for about 10 weeks, my outcome is just going to be the very basic model in which it's able to take these input storm parameters and output other storm parameters basically as kind of like a classification. And over time, we're hoping to be able to make this model more of a generalized thing. So we're hoping to be able to have community members utilize it and other researchers utilize it, because over time, it'll become more generalized and be able to actually, like you'll be able to actually input storm surge or information that you know about a storm surge, and it'll output like other information about this storm. So you'll be able to understand like what impacts the storm is going to have.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of DesignSafe Radio. This show is sponsored by the National Science Foundation grant number 1612144. You can subscribe to DesignSafe Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find your podcasts. Please leave us a review so we can improve the show. Please also help others find our episodes in iTunes. Thanks for your feedback and support. You can find out more about NHERI at designsafe-ci.org, on Facebook at DesignSafe Radio, or on Twitter at NHERI DesignSafe.